Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome to yet another episode of the IHNDY series. And in this segment, we are handling the awesome books. In this segment, we normally review non-fictional books in the hope that we are going to get this liquid gold, the valuable lessons in them, and help us in this journey of personal development. If you're new to the channel, kindly remember to subscribe. And we value feedback, so remember to leave a comment down there. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, in today's episode, we are going to review this book, The Diary of a C.E.O. by Steven Bartlett. I hope I pronounced that name correctly, because in most of his talks, most of his videos, most of his podcasts, he only introduces himself as Steven. So for reference in this video, I'll also refer to him as Steven. I first heard about Steven in his podcast in YouTube. He has a very massive channel entitled The Diary of a CEO, whereby he interviews these great guys in this world, and they share really valuable lessons. And I think it's from those podcasts that this book was born. And in this book, he tries to share with us the 33 laws of business and life. Quite interesting. So let's get into it. This book is a guide to achieving greatness in both yourself, your personal life, and also your businesses. It is rooted in the mastery of 4 pillars, that is the self, philosophy, storytelling, and teamwork. And so for that reason, these 33 laws that have been written down here are partitioned into those 4 segments. And so in part 1, we have laws that will help you master yourself, master the self. In part 2, we'll have laws that will help you with storytelling. And storytelling is all about marketing, sharing your opinions and ideas with the world. Then in part 3, we'll learn about influencing change. And this is all about philosophy, the philosophy that guides you to influence change. And the final part, we'll talk about leadership, team leaders, and CEOs. The book is not that big. It is only 368 pages long, and quite a good read if you ask me. You get into the first part of it, you want to go straight to the end. Why? Because Steven uses a very unique style of writing. He writes to piss you off, and in pissing you off, he reveals to you something that you were totally ignorant about. And that's what I love about this book. So the book, as I said, is divided into 4 parts, and we're going to do part by part. So as I've said, part 1 is about the self. It's all about how you master yourself, because all revolutions, all reformations, anything that comes with societal change and even change in your business has to first begin with yourself. And after you've mastered yourself, you go out to tell that story in a way of marketing, selling the idea to others. And after that is done, you develop philosophies that lead you into whatever course you are into. And after developing a philosophy, then you recruit a team that will help you bring that change. So, as I've said, we have 33 laws of business and life highlighted in this book, but I'm not going to pass through all those laws. Instead, I'm going to share with you the laws that I found very, very interesting. There are a few per part, and so I'll go part by part. The laws in these parts that I found very interesting. So in part 1, about mastering the self, the first law was clearly very important for me, because I think he was very strategic in putting down this law. The law says, fill your 5 buckets in the correct order. Now, what on earth are we talking about here? So Steven believes that there are 5 buckets that you're supposed to fill in yourself for you to achieve greatness. And you're supposed to fill them in order. So the first bucket is about what you know. That's about knowledge. Second bucket is about what you can do. And he says that applied knowledge is skill. The third bucket is about who you know. And here we are talking about networks. The fourth bucket is about what you have, the resources that you have. And the fifth bucket is what people think about you, your reputation. So Steven believes that you're supposed to fill these buckets in order, in hierarchy. And the first one clearly is knowledge. Don't look for reputation if you don't have knowledge. Don't look for networks if you don't have knowledge. Don't look for resources if you don't have knowledge. And don't look for skills if you don't have knowledge. Now, first and foremost, you have to build knowledge. After building knowledge, you have to apply this knowledge. So that's the second bucket, the bucket of skills. All right. And after filling knowledge and skills, then you can get out to people so that they can know you for what you know and what you can do. And so the best networks are built around these principles, what you know and what you can do. And after you've built a network, then resources can easily be sourced, either in terms of salary or in terms of, pulling together funds and resources, because you have the knowledge, you have the skills, and you have the people. And then after all that, then what you do with that is what gives you a name, what gives you a reputation. That was very interesting to me because he believes that those steps should be followed. You shouldn't fill bucket number 5 when bucket number 1 is empty. You shouldn't fill bucket number 3 when bucket number 2 is empty. It will not play for you in the long game. Now, the second law that I found interesting in part 1 happens to be law number 3. So law number 3, what does it say? Law number 3 says, you must never disagree. Again, very compelling. I'm like, Steven, what on earth are you telling us? And so Steven says that even if you share a difference in opinion with somebody, you must never directly tell them that you disagree, because that will always lead into chaos. Instead, what you should do, you should find the points at which the two of you agree on, the shared ground, the common ground. And after you've identified that, then you can easily bring out this other opinion. People will tend to listen to you if they know that you share something in common with them. But if at all the two of you are totally different, then nobody will listen to the other, and you'll keep going back and forth, and there'll be no solution. So, rule number 3, you must never disagree. Begin from what the two of you share. The third law that I found interesting is law number 6, which says that do not tell, but ask. To change behavior, do not tell, but ask. I'll explain. If you want to influence behavior, if you want yourself to change something, or you want somebody to change something, then you should not go and tell them, do this. Instead, go and ask them, will you do this? Ask binary questions that give you either a yes or no answer. Now, if I tell you go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, most probably you might not subscribe. But if I ask you, will you subscribe to my YouTube channel? Interestingly, you will subscribe. And that's how you trick your mind and trick the mind of others into influencing behavior, by asking questions, asking binary questions that require yes or no, rather than telling statements. I found that really, really mind-blowing. And to part 2 of the book, where we talk about storytelling, and basically this is about marketing. I loved law number 12, which said that you should always piss people off. Now, again, the language he uses here is really mind-blowing, because you'll be like, what are you advising us to do? And so it's interesting what he says, that if you are going to do marketing, then love or hate is really greater than indifference. So whatever you do, people should not be indifferent about it. You'd rather piss them off so that they hate you and hate the product, because that will also help you and boost you in marketing. Case in point, here in Kenya, there's a young man by the name Caliph Cairo, somebody I've happened to interact with on multiple occasions. And you probably know him by either because of the good things he does or because of the bad things he has done, And I really love that about him, because most people, I can say without fear of contradiction, most people who know Caliph, not on business terms, but just on celebrity terms, they know him based on the bad information that is out there about him on the social media. On Twitter, the guy is a menace. And in one of the interviews he was having with Phil Karanja, I think, he said that his marketing is very strategic. Whatever he does in Twitter is not an accident at all. Because by the fact that people hate, by the fact that he's pissing people off, as they speak out there, they are helping him in his marketing strategy. And the outreach is remarkable. I had never seen it that way, but Steven here has just confirmed that theory, that hate is stronger than indifference in marketing. Now, the second law that caught my mind in part 2 is law number 14, whereby Steven says that you should always fight for the first 5 seconds. He says that within the first 5 seconds, people decide whether they are mentally with you or not. And so whatever you do in terms of storytelling, in terms of marketing, in terms of sharing your idea and opinion, you should always fight for their attention in the first 5 seconds. Get their attention within those first 5 seconds. And now, onto part 3. The first law in part 3 that captivated me was law number 19, whereby Steven says that you should always sweat the small stuff. And what he means here is that you should always pay attention to the tiny details. He says the difference between what differentiates the achiever and the average person is actually the details, because they'll kind of do the same thing, but one will take into consideration the minute details of whatever they're doing and the other will not. And the basketball legend from the Lakers team says this very well, Kobe Bryant. He believes in the fundamentals of basketball. The form shooting, the footwork, just the basics. He keeps doing that every single day in, day out. And you could see the difference in coach. He wasn't doing flashy moves or whatever. No, it was just purely fundamentals, but he was paying attention to the details, and success was inevitable for him. The second law in this part was law number 21. Number 21 says that you should always outfail your competition. You must always outfail your competition. And you'll be wondering, what is Steven trying to tell us? So Steven believes that the more you experiment, the more you fail, the more you learn, and the more you achieve, right? It's the same philosophy of you'd never know how to best clean yourself if you're afraid of falling. And this is something startups do a lot, most successful startups. When a product is 51% ready, they release it into the market, and criticisms will come, they'll have a big failure. And from that, they learn, go back to the lab, work on it, bring it back at 80%. While the other guy is still struggling for his product to be 95% for him to release maybe 5 years later. In a span of 5 years later, this other startup that was not afraid of failure has grown into something big. So that's the rule. Always outfail your competition. Coming in next is law number 22, where Steven believes you must be a plan A thinker. Why? Because plan B always gives you the comfort and consolation of failure in plan A. Now, you shouldn't be moving that way, because that means you're already contemplating failure. Instead, you should focus all your energies in plan A, and it has to work. Coming from a background of sports, this makes a lot of sense to me, because I've played in basketball teams where we had a deep bench, we had a lot of substitutes, and I've also played in teams where we had no substitutes at all. It was just 5 guys who have to play the entire game. All right. And interestingly, in the teams whereby we were only 5 men, I used to give it my all, and my teammates as well, because we knew that there was nobody else coming to save us. There was nobody in the team there to play for us. The people who were out there were just there to cheer for us, but no one was coming to get into that field. And so we always gave it our all. And we won championships like that, by the way. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I have medals. These ones here, the ones you see on screen, to prove that. And the same thing, I believe, happens in boxing. When you're going to play a football match, you always say, there's a substitute. Going to play basketball, there's a substitute. But if you're going for boxing, it's just you against that guy. Nobody else is coming to save you. So plan A has to work. That is what Steven is saying here. You must become a plan A thinker. Coming in next is law number 24, whereby you must make pressure your privilege. Why? Because comfort kills you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And a practical illustration of this again is into the sports world. There is this guy by the name LeBron James, who arguably is the greatest to ever do it in the world of basketball. I said what I said. And so since his rookie years, he has always been having pressure, the pressure to perform, pressure from fans, pressure from haters, pressure from critics, and this pressure has always fueled him to always perform night in, night out into the seasons. He has won multiple awards, he has won multiple championships, multiple MVPs. As we speak, he's the scoring king. He has the most points in NBA history. Why? Because he has fed off this pressure from people. And that's exactly what Steven is saying here, that you must make pressure your privilege. Coming in next is law number 26, whereby Steven believes your skills are worthless. What is valuable is your context. And I think he shares the same opinion here with South African entrepreneur Vusi Thembakwaya, who believes that your environment is everything. You know, you might be having the right skills, but in the wrong environment, you won't thrive. But with the right skills in the right environment, then things will work out for you. And that is why I think people normally copy skills. They just airlift a skill from somebody and they try to cultivate it and it doesn't work out for them. Why? Because the context is different. Steven believes that your skills are worthless when your context is wrong. So your context will give your skills the relevance. And finally, we get into part 4 of the book where you're talking about teamwork, how to influence people, how to manage people, and build a culture, build a team, and manage them. It's the last part of the book and also the shortest part of the book. And getting straight into my favorite law in that part is law number 29, whereby Steven believes you must have a cult mentality. As you're starting up, you and your team need to have a common value system, a shared value system, and some sort of a cult, because that will enable you to have the same destination, to have the same ambitions, to have the same work ethic. Of course, this has to be dropped over time as you progress, but at the beginning, it's very important to have a cult mentality. And finally, my last favorite rule in this book, my last favorite law in this book is that you must be an inconsistent leader. Oh, Steven. Yes, you must be an inconsistent leader. Why? He says that if you're managing people, if you're managing a team, you need to get very personal with the team members there. You know, connect with them at a very emotional level. That way, it is easy for you to motivate them to work and encourage them to bring change, the change that you want. And he gives an example of the great coach of Manchester United, the legend by the name Sir Alex Ferguson. He says that this coach knew his players through and through. He knew their nicknames, he knew the names of their pets, he knew their grandfather's favorite whiskey, you know, those tiny, tiny, minute details. And while maybe Wayne Rooney would think that I know who Sir Alex Ferguson is, Ronaldo will come with a totally different facet of who the coach is. Why? Because he connects with people at their personal levels, and so he's a little bit inconsistent if taken from the bird's eye view. But again, he is deep down into people, encouraging them, meeting them at their emotional levels. That is very interesting. It's something I had not seen, and it was very, very mind-blowing to me. Now that brings us to the end of this book. I really, really enjoyed reading it and I highly recommend it. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you are into personal development, part 1 is really, really important for you because it gives you mastery of yourself. It gives you information about laws that govern how you operate, and it can be very, very good for someone who's intentional about self-mastery. If you're into business, if you're into entrepreneurship, then the rest of the parts are equally important because part 2 deals with marketing, selling your product, selling your opinion, selling your ideas to people. Also, it talks about building the philosophy around whatever it is that you're trying to create, and also how to manage and lead that startup. So this is a book I'd highly recommend for someone who's intentional about their own personal growth and also their business life. And so that's it for today. This has been my review of The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. And I hope to see you in the next one. If you are yet to subscribe, kindly do that. And we value feedback, so remember to leave a comment for us. That can help us to be more creative and be more informative in making these little changes in the world. Until next time, bye.